So we've got those two pieces in place. What's number 3? Where do we go from there?
Step 3, we really get into the value of the business, what drives value, and what inhibits value in terms of, from a purchaser's point of view. So it's not sort of a theoretical valuation, but we're really looking in terms of who the likely purchasers are, how they view this business, and what sort of enhances value and what inhibits value. So, we've got, I'm a chartered business valuator. We've got business valuators in our business. So we'll look at the business in terms of the value at that point in time. What would a purchaser likely pay for that business, at that time? But we'll also go through a number of sort of value drivers. We typically have a list of 54 value drivers that we look at on each business to determine what is inhibiting value, what has the opportunity to enhance value for that particular business in that industry with those owners.
Mm-hmm. What's some examples of those value drivers? What might we think about?
Say the strength of your management team. So the strength of the management team is an important value driver, but it's very buyer specific, because if the likely buyer is a competitor, that competitor might not care as much about the strength of the management team because they might have their own management team that they would be bringing in. Where if the likely buyer is going to be a private equity buyer, they're very concerned about the strength of the management team. They want to sort of be in the board of directors role with the business, so they really want a strong management team. So by us sort of assessing who the likely buyer is, sort of integrates with those value drivers. Another value driver is, say, customer diversity. So if you have 1,000 different customers and no customers more than 2 or 3% of sales, well, that's a really strong value driver that enhances value. It will increase the multiple. But if you have 4 customers, one of them is 60% of the business and happens to be the brother-in-law of the vendor, well, then that's going to be very stressful to a buyer, and that's going to inhibit value. So in that case, we're probably going to encourage that company to try to diversify their customer base before they exit.
So this is essentially a report card on the quality of the business as you go through this process, yeah?
The quality of the business in terms of risk.
From a buyer's point of view.
The risk and reward for a buyer.
Right.
So if I use this example, if Bjorn, you come to me and say, Bob, I want you to buy my business. I'm making $1 million a year. Well, I'm happy for you that you're making $1 million a year, but what's really relevant to me is what I'm going to make when you're gone and I own it. So if I look at that business and I see that there's only 3 customers and one of them is your brother-in-law, that you have one supplier, and that happens to be your first cousin, you don't really have a financial reporting system, but you know problems when you see them. And the cash flow, well, you are often dipping into your own personal line of credit in order to fund cash flow. Well, I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to be very concerned about the fact that when you're gone, I'm not going to be making $1 million a year. I might be making half that. So that's going to impact the multiple I pay. But if I look at your business and you've got customer diversification, you've got redundant supply, you've got good financial reporting, you've got all those things in place, I'm going to be a lot more comfortable stepping in and buying that business, knowing I can probably start where you've left off.
And you were talking earlier about the 3 to 4 years before the transaction is that transition, and ultimately afterward as well. I suppose that's the work that you do. I mean, your company's called Veer Advisors, so this isn't just a report card. Then, these are the risks, these are the opportunities, these are driving value, these are detracting from value.
And that first touch point is great, because a lot of the times, say it's 3 or 4 years before they're going to exit, we get in there, look at it, and say, you're good. There's a few things you can do here and there in order to improve it, but really there's not a lot you need to do. So, let's meet again in 6 months. Let's meet every quarter, over the next couple of years, whatever it is. And then when you get closer to actually wanting to pull the trigger, that's when we can get active. But by not having that first meeting, we don't have that chance. And there's a lot of businesses where, they're ready to go. And we're looking at it going, man, if we'd talked to you 2 or 3 years ago, there's a lot of things you could have done to enhance value and sellability.
I understand the value enhancement process now, and that's quite comprehensive, and that's where you need the time to make those changes.